Before we start the episode, if the content of the show is something that has been resonating with you, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone who you feel may need to hear it. This helps the show grow and helps us keep bringing this content out into the world. My guest today is Marston Fries. This is Marston's second time on the show, and after the first interview, I felt that we left so much on the table that I had to have her back. And to be honest, I was kind of nervous having her back a second time because I've had guests on more than once before, and I always worry that, well, are we going to have enough to say? But like the first interview, after this interview was over, I thought we could have gone for another hour, and this interview lasted an hour and a half. But her story is so interesting, and I just feel like I personally resonate with her so much. The things that she's able to explain answer so many of my own questions, and I know that they answer others' questions as well. She does a great job of explaining that. But she was a rising star on Wall Street and left that career as she learned that she was being guided by spirit to become a channel and a teacher herself. And she's gone on to live this life that she describes as a trust fall. She's traveling the world now, being guided by spirit towards something that she's not even sure what it is yet, but she has the courage to follow that, and that in itself is interesting and inspirational. And I feel like having her on just as an example for that type of courage is valuable. But the information she was able to give in this interview is astonishing. I'm not always jazzed up after an interview. I always feel good after interviews, but both times I've talked to Marston, I have been totally charged and reinvigorated and remotivated to keep doing this podcast because it makes me feel like I'm following my own guidance and have something to contribute to humanity as well, just because I have guests like her on. But if you enjoy this interview, go back if you haven't already and listen to her in episode 21 as well. She'll give more of her backstory and some more channeled information there. But before I start rambling on like I tend to do, I'm just going to say this is my interview with Marston Fries, and I hope you enjoy it. Marston, good to see you again. Thank you so much for
Good.
coming back.
Oh, good to see you too, Jake. Thank you so much for
Yes.
having me back.
Yeah, I loved our last interview, and you're doing so much. It was hard to get into everything that was going on with you.
I know.
But right now, you're in Costa Rica, and the last time we spoke, you were in Europe. So I do want to give you a chance to talk about that, and then we'll get into some more specifics of some details that we didn't go into in the last interview. So,
Yeah, that
what?
sounds
Tell us
great.
what's going on with you. Everybody's going to be envious of this life of yours.
I know it's been a ride to say the least. Yeah, I don't know if we had really touched on this before, but when my guides made contact with me last September, they had me kind of embark on this whole trust fall journey partnership
Mhm.
with them. And I knew that this would involve leaving behind home and pretty much everything that I've known. And we'll talk about more about that, I'm sure. But they had me go to divinely guided locations around the world, and this has been just this whole journey has really just been me in partnership and in full faith and trust with my intuition, my higher consciousness, aka my guides. Um, and so I have just been traveling around the world according to where I feel guided to go. And I've been having the most incredible, magical, synchronistic experiences along the way. I've been learning so much, not just about myself, but about the world, about the people that I'm meeting, about my relationship with my guides, about what I'm building in my life. And so, yeah, last time we met was I was in Montenegro, which was incredible. And it's wild to think that in just a couple months, so much can continue to transpire. So I went to the UK in the month of August, and I was kind of traveling around those countries. And then I went from there to Brazil for a week, and I met up with a couple friends there. And then from there, I was actually supposed to go to Costa Rica from there, but I found out at the airport ticket check-in counter on the day of the full moon eclipse that I was not allowed to fly to Costa Rica from Brazil without the yellow fever vaccination certificate, which was my first time hearing about it. And so I was rerouted to Peru. So I stayed there for a week, which I felt like was very divinely guided as well. And I had some really cool experiences there, and I felt very called to rest. And so I just got into Costa Rica a couple days ago, and I have kind of a trek ahead of me to get to my final destination, which I'm leaving for tomorrow. But yeah, so that's pretty much the gist of what where I've been and and what I've been doing. And I don't know how it transpires from here. I just know that this is a very monumental chapter for me.
Do you know what's going to come up when people hear this? Is what they're going to ask me, and it's just personal, so you don't have to answer it if you don't want. Is
Is
how does
it
she
money?
finance this? How does she
Yeah.
do all this? You know, everybody wants to do it. How do you do it? Is money
Yeah.
made along the way, or
Yeah. So I think I'm glad you brought this up. And I want to say really quick, Jake, there is a bit of an echo I'm hearing, just my own voice. So it's fine. I'll keep talking. Um, but so that's a great question because everyone keeps asking me that. When I left my career, I had what I would consider minimal savings because I had only been in that job for about 2 years. And I'm very fortunate enough that I was able to have the savings that I did have. Um, but it really was only enough to make me feel a little bit supported in making this leap of faith, but certainly nothing like leaving without any plan in place was something that I definitely had a lot of fear surrounding. I'll put it that way. So what happened was when I started sharing my story on TikTok in late April, I started having like thousands of people reach out asking for help on their journey, telling me that my story was resonating for them. And so I ended up getting enough people reaching out that I bought a computer in May while I was still in in the US, and I built a website and I started offering psychic mediumship and channeling sessions for people because I knew that this was what I was meant to be doing. And that in and of itself was a leap because I was dealing with all sorts of imposter syndrome and feeling like I wasn't fully ready, but I did it. And in just a few months, it started growing, and I built a business. So I've really just been building this business as I've been traveling, and just trusting that the right clients, that the aligned clients, will be attracted to me, will be magnetized to me, and they have been. So I've been doing intuitive consulting and channeling and mediumship.
that's amazing. That is inspiring, and I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad to hear it. I'm so glad to hear that that's working. So
Thank you.
is what is unfolding? Do you have an you know what I mean? Is there's this thing getting clearer to you as to where you're being guided towards something, or what is unfolding that you can tell at this point?
Yeah, that is such a great question. I know that it's something really big. Like all the messages I've been getting from my guides are just like, we're preparing you, we're helping regulate your nervous system. This is about learning to trust that, for like you brought up this point earlier, to trust that the money will be there for me, will be there to support me as I step further into soul alignment. And the way that they've really put it is, and the way that it's come through for me is the soul knows the path to abundance because it's really just the path home. That's just our divine birthright. But the man made system doesn't necessarily support that path, right? So it's about learning to live intuitively and learning to trust in the higher guidance, even when it doesn't necessarily make sense based on our external reality. And I'm getting somewhere with this, but I've thought a lot about how our external reality is really just a lagging indicator. It's a reflection of our past belief systems that have gotten us to where we are now, but it is in no way indicative of where we're going and what we're creating, in our mind. And so I think that has been a big part of understanding, okay, what I'm building and where I'm going is not necessarily what I'm seeing around me right now. And so it's involved a lot of trust in this process. But so to answer your question, I don't know. Oh, and whatever you just did, Jake, just stopped the echo. Um,
Just now?
yes, you just hit something and it stopped the echo. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
my mic.
Okay.
So
Okay.
all I know to do during the interview is to shut my mic off when you're speaking, and that's fine. So I'll
Okay.
do that. Okay?
Okay. Perfect. Thanks. So, okay. So, what I now know though to be true is I know that I'm meant to be in Costa Rica for this chapter because I have this feeling that my contact with my guides is about to skyrocket. They have guided me toward this. They told me when they first made contact that I was meant to walk the shamanic path in terms of being a medium between worlds, between dimensions, planes of existence, and they were kind of preparing me for this. And since getting here, I've realized that I'm meant to kind of step further onto this path. So I'm actually preparing right now for a master plant dietess, and I'm going to be embarking on this journey in Costa Rica for it's like a 2 week journey here, and it felt very aligned in terms of the right retreat, kind of finding me, the right shamans, facilitators that I was able to meet with virtually before this. And my guides the whole time were just coming in so clearly saying, this is the next step. We're preparing you to release what needs to be released from the old paradigm before you can fully step into this new chapter that we're essentially launching you into. There's a reason why I can't fully see what this is. I've been getting glimpses into it. I know it involves more physical open contact with them. I know it involves a deeper partnership with them. And I also know it involves down the road, I don't know what the timeline is for this, but ultimately helping other people in facilitating open contact for others and facilitating these types of healing experiences so that other people can tune into their own psychic and intuitive abilities and learn to communicate in real time with their guides. So is what has come through. I don't know what this looks like in the coming months. I do know my book is being published that I've written. It's called Trust Fall. It's being published on December 12th, and they've confirmed that that's the right date. And it details, my entire experience, including all my travels. And all I know is everything is changing in my life, and this has kind of been this whole journey in getting to this point.
Excellent. Congratulations on your book, by the way. I just saw that too on one of
Thank
your
you.
TikToks. Yeah, I'm going to get that. Um,
Thank you.
did you say that you were, what did you say? Master plant dietess?
Yes. Yeah.
And could you explain that?
Yes. So it's essentially there's two components that I'll be embarking on. So there's the plant medicine ceremony, the plant medicine retreat of ayahuasca, which I've never done before. So this feels, I mean, given how connected I already am in these types of experiences, I'm really looking forward to seeing what continues to open for me doing that. But it's really so it involves sitting with the medicine of ayahuasca, but then it's so much deeper than that. It involves sitting with a master plant or a master teacher. Um, and so I'll be sitting with one of the master plants for 10 days, and I'll be in pretty much full isolation, solitude, besides the guidance of the shamans I'm working with. Um, and it's about sitting with the spirit of that plant, learning how to telepathically communicate with the spirit of that plant and whatever they are wanting to teach, the guidance that they're wanting to show and infuse. And the one I'm sitting with will involve a lot. It's kind of known as like the heart opener plant. It's called Bobinsana, and it's a very feminine spirit. It's very mild, but as far as psychoactive plants go, it's very minimally psychoactive, which I think is perfect for a beginner like myself, kind of just starting to embark on this journey. But yes, so it's pretty strict. There's a pretty strict diet that you need to follow going into the retreat, during the retreat, and then after the retreat as well. And it's not just physical, but it's spiritual and mental as well. So I'm happy to get into more of what that entails, but it really is just this all-encompassing, comprehensive spiritual experience where everything that needs to come up to be released, to be healed, to be seen, and to be actually recognized is going to happen. And it just feels like it's interesting because I've been getting visions about doing this for the past couple years, and I feel like it's been calling me for some time. So this is the time that it's happening, and I'm just trusting that everything's unfolding as it should.
So, okay, so you can hear me right now.
Yep.
I think I figured a little trick out to temporarily mess with this mic, but so the entire retreat is 10 days, is that right?
hmm
But you'll be sitting with different medicines for different throughout the 10 days.
Yes,
Right. So,
correct.
okay. Because I
Yes.
thought that sounds intense. I have been to an ayahuasca retreat. I participated in it, but it was 3 nights. It was 3 servings, and it was brutal.
Yeah.
You know that. You know the stories. But I was ready to go back pretty quickly after that. I was like, oh, that was brutal. That was terrible, but it was amazing. It was very
Yeah,
clean. I was surprised at how much of a physical cleanse it was. How I felt so crystal clear when I was done. I,
totally.
I wouldn't say that I had any because I've eaten mushrooms a few times too, and those were some
Hmm.
profound visionary states. So I was kind of
Hmm.
expecting that with ayahuasca. I didn't have that type of experience, but I was going to ask you, have you had any other experience with any plant medicines other than these? And did you have any visionary experiences with those?
Yeah, and that's so interesting to hear about your experience with ayahuasca as well, because I know it's different for everyone, right? I mean, I think a common mistake or a common misnomer is people go into these journeys just expecting to get clarity, to get answers, or to get these, profound visions. And yes, that can happen, but it's the way that it interacts with each individual body is so unique, and you always get what you need, as I'm sure you realized in that experience. But in terms of my own plant medicine experience, I have done psilocybin only once, very intentionally. I had microdosed before a little bit in like more social settings, but I really sat with psilocybin, or did I just psilocybin? Yeah. um, and I did this in a very controlled setting, and I had an incredible experience. It was very mild. Um, but yes, I did receive visions. And you know what I found during that kind of ignited, and this happened to be presented to me in August in the UK with a friend. So I feel like it was very serendipitous leading into this. But I found that my mediumship abilities were so intense. And I mean, I was seeing my ex-boyfriend who was in spirit. He was coming through. He wanted to be a part of this journey too, and he was having so much fun with it, and we were having full-blown conversations. And I was also seeing other people in spirit that were kind of just walking around, and like in the I was in this really big park, and it was really interesting to connect with the spirit realm in such an intense and profound way, to really just exist in two worlds at once at the same time. And I was also shown too, um, it was interesting. I was kind of shown like a tesseract, and I don't know how to explain this. Actually, my book cover kind of illustrates it. It was like a prism um, that contained my entire reality, all my memories. I was shown all my memories from childhood, growing up, um, everything. And then I was also shown all my future memories that I have yet to experience. Not all of them, but the ones that I was allowed to see. And I was shown certain people coming into my life, that including a future partner that I know that is something that I know I'm about to encounter. And my guides have made that pretty clear. And it was interesting how he was shown too. He was kind of shown in this other tesseract, this other prism, almost like it was like a different dimension that he was currently existing in. And I was kind of shown these timelines converging, where we would meet. And it reminded me of the movie Interstellar. I don't know if you ever saw that, but the part where Matthew McConaughey is he's talking about how time is the fourth dimension, and he's kind of experiencing this own library, or tesseract information, where he's able to communicate through dimensions and see all of this. And that's the best way I can really equate it, my experience too.
Well, the reason I ask is because I wanted to know how similar or dissimilar it is, the experience of, say, eating psilocybin, and the experience of, I don't even know how you'd say it, channeling or psychic
Mhm.
experiences, in the way that
Yeah,
information comes to you, and the energy of it, the signature of it. Are they similar at
yeah,
all? How so?
totally. Yeah. Oh, wow. That's a great question. The energetic signature. I really, the way that it came through for me was very much so. When I channel, I had three psychic channeling and mediumship sessions today before this, and I've noticed for me, it's a very natural state of being. It's a very subtle shift in my energy field and in my frequency that I'm tapping into. It feels very subtle. It doesn't feel like anything psychoactive. It's because it really is just our natural state of being, all of us. Um, and so it's interesting because on psilocybin, Psilos, having the hardest
It's okay, I do too. You can just say mushrooms.
mushrooms. Thank you. I don't know what is going on here with words, but it's interesting because when I was having that experience, it was like all of this was just heightened. And it still felt subtle in a way. It felt very natural. It was just like, oh, I'm tapped in. It was honestly like seeing colors that you haven't really like different shades of colors or different hues of colors that you haven't really experienced before. But you know that they're real, that they're like, oh, now because now I come out of that experience and now I know that I can see these colors still in my day to day. That just kind of allowed me to more easily see them. And so I feel like with regard to psychic channeling and mediumship, this is where plant medicine can be so beautiful and beneficial because it really just it's a tool that just allows us to reconnect or deepen our connection with the truth of who we really are, which is we are multidimensional beings, and we are supposed to be having a multidimensional experience. And so I think depending on your state of mind and the level of consciousness at which you're currently operating, that completely dictates the type of experience you would have with any type of plant medicine, because they're here as teachers, they're here as facilitators. Does that make sense, the way that I just explained that?
Yes, yeah. And the reason I asked that was because I didn't mean to imply that nothing happened in my journey with ayahuasca, but there was just no visionary state. But
Yeah.
what did come that was pretty unique was this very obvious space in which my internal dialogue was completely gone. And I wouldn't be
Mm.
aware of it until I would finally have a thought. I'm like, oh, it's been a while since a thought had come in. And I've told this on the show before, but I'll tell it again because I haven't talked to you. But it was beautiful. We were out on a pasture in the Midwest, and it was the first time I'd ever slept under the stars. I didn't even intend to, but I woke
Wow.
up. I woke up in the morning. I'd slept under the stars, but so I'm laying there at night and just blank, just thoughtless, but not knowing I am until I had the thought. And the thought was that I'm breathing like a dying animal. Because I was sick. Or I shouldn't say sick, but you know what I mean. The vomiting and the diarrhea did happen.
Yeah.
I got that. I
Yes.
got that.
Yes.
But
Yeah, that's yep.
that's the brutal part. The nausea is really intense. So when I get nauseous, I get really nauseous.
Yeah.
So I was breathing with these short inhalations and long exhalations, like, and I just kind
Oh,
of noticed I've seen animals dying, breathing this way,
yeah.
and the thought kind of came in, and it was so clear that it's why it wasn't like one of my own thoughts. If any of them were mine, I don't even know. That,
Yeah.
Jake, all you have to do is breathe. All you ever
Yes.
have to do is breathe. That's how it hit
Yes.
each time. It wasn't like just a casual statement. Oh, just breathe. You'll be okay. It meant forever. All you ever have to
Forever.
do is breathe. When there's stress, when there's this type of discomfort, the only thing you ever are required to do is breathe. And there were other things like that, and they all hit like that. And
Hmm.
that was what I took with me, and it's still there. It's still true. And these deep, profound truths that are trite and cliche, and that you could put on a bumper sticker, like I say, but they're true. They're
They're true.
cliche for a reason, and that type of
Totally.
thing really hit deep. So I didn't need any visionary states, but it it made me wonder then if that was how channeling felt, where thoughts, or I guess information, just kind of comes in and it's packaged like a thought. It feels like your own voice even, but it was just, I guess it made it easier for me to discern that that was coming from some other, maybe
Somewhere
aspect
else.
of myself even, but somewhere else
Hmm.
other than this daily monkey chatter mind.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I love that you brought that up. And the breath too. I mean, this is where breath work has been so powerful for me because it's a reminder that breathing is not just the prerequisite we've been taught, you know, that it is. It's so much more. It's quite literally like existence that we have here. It's the reason for being. It's the access point for everything. And it's about presence and consciousness and being present and conscious of the breath. And I think the like ayahuasca, it sounds like you had a very powerful experience with that remembrance and just that coming home feeling of that. And I feel like you just hit the nail on the head with regard to channeling and what that feels like. And this is what I help my clients with all the time, because they have trouble tapping into their higher consciousness, to their psychic guidance, to the guidance of their guides, whatever you want to call it, because it's all connected, it's all tied to the same thing. And it really is like a thought that you have, and recognizing that the difference between your own monkey chatter, your own physical brain, and the thoughts that are constantly nagging you and yelling at you, it's what's beneath the surface. And it'll just come in very quietly. It'll come in, it'll be subtle, but it can be persistent. And so what you just described with, having this thought come in and you realizing, oh, where did that come? That's not from me. That's from somewhere else. Maybe an aspect of my higher consciousness. Yes, because it's connected to our guides, our higher guidance. But that's the perfect illustration of how channeling works. It's really like the telepathic communication that we have with, it could be with another soul. Like I channel my guides, that are like the extraterrestrial, my extraterrestrial guides, who are beings, but I also will just channel through higher guidance. That's just from my own, it's just from my own higher consciousness, and it'll be connected to the unified field, which is connecting in with the electromagnetic field and the field of the person that I am sitting with and reading for, and their higher guidance and their guides. So it's really all connected. And I think that's the thing. There really is no separation, because even my guides, who are beings, our soul family. We are connected in our higher consciousness, and so we always have access to that higher information. If you think of it like your soul star chakra, which sits above your crown chakra, it's your oversoul. It's all iterations of you, all versions of your soul, because the the soul that's inhabiting this physical body right now is not the full soul. It's an aspect of the soul, because if it was the full soul, we would explode. It's too much energy, and we're just these concentrated personalities inhabiting these avatars to have this specific experience for our soul's expansion and growth. But then we're also always connected to the rest of who we are and the rest of our soul family. So I love that you brought that up, because that's exactly how channeling works and psychic information.
I'm just always curious, but you have to have had something other than just these out of the, non-ordinary thoughts, you know what I mean? To be able to say and describe so clearly relationships with other beings. Do you know what I mean? I've never had anything where I'd be like,
Yeah.
well, that was coming from another being. What is it in the experiences that you're having that make it so clear to you? What do you perceive or see or hear or feel that's different than just say a thought like I had on ayahuasca?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I mean, for me, it's very clearly telepathic communication. It's full-blown conversations that are, I know I can hear different, there are different voices that will come in. I know the voices, I recognize their energy. I recognize because they've taught me this is how this guide's energy feels. This is how this guide's energy feels. This is how, my loved ones in spirit feel. And so I've gotten to know, just as you would get to know someone, in your waking life, it's kind of the same process. How does it feel to be around them? What does their voice sound like? What are their mannerisms? What's their sense of humor? And so that's kind of how I've gotten to know the energies that I work with. And sometimes I can see them very clearly. And yeah, other times I don't really so much see them as I do feel them around me. I know exactly where they are in the room. Um, I've actually had a few kind of eerie experiences, which have been really cool, where I'll be guided to look like I know someone's over here in the room, and then like a piece of paper will drop over there, or like something will drop and hit the floor, and I'll know, and like that's them just being like, don't second guess yourself, like you know this, you know this. So it'll come through in a myriad of ways, and sometimes I receive downloads, which are just like you said earlier, like a a packaged thought. It's like a packet of information that's truly just like kind of being downloaded like from a cloud into my consciousness. And it's just like a, oh, I know this concept. And it's oftentimes presented to me in the form of, quantum concepts. And then my guides will start coming in and showing me how to work with these concepts and showing me more about how to articulate these and how to relate them to our physical human experience in the everyday. So, to answer your question, it's when I receive, psychic information and impressions, when I'm in either with myself or with a client, I'm able to now tell, if it's just coming from my own intuition and higher consciousness versus if there's someone else involved. And I know what it feels like when a spirit makes themselves known. And I know sometimes how my body will start to feel, or how they'll make me feel to know that, to make their presence known, I guess is the best way to put it.
Okay, well, thank you. That's always so interesting to me.
Yeah.
Speaking of these things that are communicating with you, last time we spoke, we touched on the Galactic Federation, but didn't get into it in too much detail because they have, unless I'm just not remembering the interview correctly, they were teaching you quite a few things. You mentioned about human origins, the Earth's history, and what things like as specific as what's going on behind the scenes politically. So could
Yeah.
you just did a TikTok. It might not know how recent it was, but you were talking about you were kind of defining what the Galactic Federation was because some people will call it the Galactic Federation of Light or they might be
Mm.
calling it different things. And you were explaining very well what the Galactic Federation was. Could you go ahead and do that if you don't mind, and then we'll get into those things that they've been talking to you about.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the Galactic Federation is, and really it's the name that they prefer to go by is like the Galactic Federation of Worlds or of Planets. I'll get into like the Galactic Federation of Light, which is not really a thing. There's kind of a lot of information here, but for all intents and purposes, we'll call it the Galactic Federation. They are the governing body of our galaxy, and they're the ones who are in charge of maintaining law and order, so to speak, or justice and peace. Peace is their ultimate goal, but it's justice, balance, and peace. Those are kind of like their three pillars that they were making me aware of. Um, they're the ones that are basically ensuring that, and this is where like it's come into play with Earth humanity, but that civilizations that are not to a certain level in their consciousness yet, or not to a certain evolutionary stage, are not interfered with and prematurely. So before a species reaches the maturity level that would make them an interstellar species, they cannot be interfered with by beings that are already of that level, because that's where manipulation can happen, and that's where our own evolution can be stunted and or manipulated. And so I know you didn't. I'm kind of getting into a few things here, but that's the Galactic Federation. They're the governing body. You can think of them as like they have military component to them. They have the, I guess you could call it like the government component to them. But there's a lot of different facets of that organization, and it's comprised of hundreds of different species.
So then should we not be thinking of this as say light beings and angels and do you know what I mean? It'd be below that, I guess you'd say, where you still need government. You need, I know you said laws, but it's more like an attempt to achieve peace and balance.
Hmm.
So, because I guess I just asked for myself, because I'm always lumping it all together. Because I would think, oh, Galactic Federation, and I'm visualizing these light beings or angels, and I'm like,
No,
well, I
yeah,
don't know what the difference is. So,
you're absolutely right. So when you think of light beings, angels, whatever you want to call them, there's, and this gets into like dark matter and plasma and orbs, plasma beings and Merkaba. They travel in many different ways because we and they have light or causal bodies as well as astral bodies, and many of them can manifest themselves in a myriad of ways. The Galactic Federation is comprised of beings from, so I'll just give you an example. I work with Arcturians. I know one of my most prominent guides is Arcturian, and I have really strong soul roots um, tied to Arcturus and tied to these beings. And so the Arcturians themselves are not necessarily on the Galactic Federation, but there are Arcturian beings who are members of the Galactic Federation. And so Arcturians are also known as some of the most spiritually evolved, spiritually advanced, intellectually advanced beings in the cosmos. They're known for sound frequency healing. They're really the healers, but they also are known as kind of the overseers. They're some of the seeders of the original human genome in the galaxy, and so they are also part of another organization called the Intergalactic Confederation, which works in conjunction with the Galactic Federation of Worlds. So archangels, when you hear about archangels, there's a tie there to Arcturian beings as well, and there are other extraterrestrial beings that, like, anytime you hear of a light being, anytime you hear of an angel, someone who's an angel or ascended master, they're usually tied to extraterrestrial beings like the Arcturians or like the Lyrans. And there are all sorts of species like this, but I'm just using those as an example to attempt to keep this as simple as possible. Does that
No,
answer your question?
yes, it's a big one. I get it, and there'd be a
Yeah,
lot to it. But I guess in my mind, I have this hierarchy of beings.
yeah.
We're humans in bodies, and when you have Arcturans, do they have physical bodies too, or are they existing at just a frequency where isn't physical? And if not, does that make them some sort of light being or angelic like
Yes.
being? That's
So
what it
it's
is.
It's both. Yep. So they are so high vibrational, high dimensional, high density consciousness. They can exist in physical bodies, yes, but they also don't have to. So when you think about like a hierarchy, to some extent that does exist, yes, but it's more so they want us to more think about it as like expanding outward rather than like hierarchical, because we're this is how we've been taught to think on earth, is in terms of a hierarchy, right? And an ascension. And so like, yes, that makes sense in terms of, raising your vibration. There are frequencies that exist that are higher or lower, but in terms of anyone being better than the other, or anything like that. They don't want us to think in terms of that, because it's more so everyone is expressing their own unique energetic signature that is specific to their planetary matrix, that is specific to their species and what they're here to embody and represent. But yes, within the structures, because there's always just like there's structure here on Earth, there's structure elsewhere in the cosmos as well. And so there are hierarchies at play, but when you're thinking about light beings and angels, archangels, that sort of thing, it's really all more interconnected than we can really fathom with our brains. So the way that and they don't really even, a lot of them don't even really have names, because they don't use names. It's just you can telepathically communicate with a certain energy signature, and whoever that energy signature is associated with, the consciousness that is associated with, should that consciousness choose to infuse or inhabit a sentient plasmic vessel, so to speak, a body, um, you can meet with them physically. And that's up to, they can choose to do that at will. So I realize that this is like a little all over the place, because it is such a big conversation to be had. And I mean, I by no means have all the answers at all. It's like the more that I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know. This is just what has been communicated to me through my guides and through my intuition, and what I've come to really understand as the truth that resonates for me.
Okay, well, a new question came up then.
Yeah.
What is it in the context of all these other beings out there? What is it about humanity, their specific unique signature that's, I guess, special or valuable?
Yeah.
Or because what I'm thinking of is an example from Robert Monroe's books. He met a being. He was actually on a craft on a ship, and this being presented itself to him as some old time comedian. I think his name was W.C. Fields or something like that. An
Mm.
old comedian. He had his body, and the reason he came to him in that body, and he was telling Monroe was, the reason I'm here observing humanity is for humor, for jokes.
Yeah.
You're one of the very few species in the cosmos that has humor and jokes. So, what other
Yeah.
do they tell you? What other types of things like
Hmm.
that makes humans special or valuable or interesting to anything else?
Totally. Oh my gosh. Well, and just to address that in and of itself, there are there are billions of people on this planet incorporated, meaning in a body. But there are trillions of unincorporated energies around us at all times. So that's like when people see the orbs, right? There are all sorts of energies that are intelligent, not necessarily conscious, but that are intelligent and that can interact with our um, electromagnetic fields and that can present in certain ways. Now, granted, there are also spirits and beings that can do that as well, but it's just I think you just brought up something interesting that I wanted to address because there are so many more energies surrounding us than we're aware of. And I mean, we can only see less than 1% of the visible light spectrum, let alone the electromagnetic spectrum. So it's wild. And this is where we talk about like dark matter coming into play and plasma and how plasma and consciousness interact with one another. And it's like the feminine and masculine energies that are just, there's so much to say with all of this. But to answer your question, what makes humanity so coveted and so valued is number one, our direct link to source consciousness. We have not bred ourselves out of that. We have not bred ourselves out of our capacity for love and compassion. And we're not synthetic. We don't have anything synthetic within us, right? Because we're not, I mean, that's a timeline that we could be going down with AI, which is like a whole other conversation. But what makes us so valuable is our life force energy and like within our life force energy is the ultimate creator energy because that's what connects us to source consciousness. That is the ultimate creator. And the other thing too is that we have 22 plus strands of extraterrestrial DNA. Every single human on this planet shares DNA with our extraterrestrial family. Whether you believe that or not, that's just what they've told me. And I've since corroborated this with other contactees, with other researchers, and physicists are starting to talk about this as well. It's all starting to come out more, but it's just interesting because we're so genetically compatible with a lot of species out there. And if they have the ability to be compatible with a species like us, who is still connected to source consciousness, is still connected to our life force energy, our capacity for love, our capacity for natural creation using our bodies, then that's a really powerful thing. And so it's not just it's the life force energy, and it's the plasma as well. It's our blood running through our veins that really just makes us so special to many of these species. Now, most of them, I don't want to, well, a lot of them care about us because we are part of their family. We like they have a vested interest in us. And then there are others that more so just want to use us for those reasons, for their own agendas. But I'll pause there.
Well, it just made me wonder then there aren't a lot of other races or species that have this direct link to creator and this purified, I guess, physicality and connection to source, like the Arcturans who are so spiritually advanced. Do they have that as well, for
They
example?
do. They do. Yes.
Okay.
But they've learned how to use it properly. They've advanced to a point where they no longer necessarily need the physical body to have this type of experience because they can manifest at will. So we're valuable because of the stage of our evolutionary journey that we're in right now too. It's really powerful because we're at this point where we are becoming conscious of our own spiritual connection and connection to other beings in the universe. And so when you think about the other humans that exist, so there's Earth humanity, which were known as Terrans, and then there's humanity outside of Earth because the human genome was not seeded on Earth first. So, for example, there's the species of the Pleiadians, which is a very umbrella term to use because there's multiple different sects of the Pleiadian species, but they are human, just like us. And many of them, if you like I have my male guide, for example, um, he's part of the Taal race, Taal, otherwise known as Tali. Um, he's human. So if you saw him walking down the street, you wouldn't really think anything. You might pick if you're tuned in and you're sensitive to energy, you would be able to pick up on the fact that he's kind of operating on a different frequency. But if you just were walking on the street and you just kind of saw him out of the corner of your eye, you wouldn't think twice. And so they too have that sort. It's humanity as a whole that's really so special. But Earth humanity it's so cared for right now and so looked at, like the example that Bob Monroe gave about the comedian, like because we're existing in this really interesting point in time where we're not all on the same page. Not everyone on our planet is existing in the same density of consciousness. And so it's just a really interesting time because it's this mix of all these energies and this convergence of all these different timelines because we're starting to become aware of our multidimensional existence. And so this is a very interesting point in time for many reasons, but just that I think that ties together perfectly what you had brought up about Bob Monroe's experience with the comedian presenting himself being like, yeah, this humanity's sense of humor. So anyway, I hope that makes sense. There's like a lot there, obviously.
Yeah, yeah, it does. It just it leads to more questions than
I know.
um because I guess I always assume that any of these races of beings who are here observing us, they're going to be more advanced, at least technologically, sometimes more spiritually. Have they
Hmm.
all been through, and they seem to be interested and value in some way the fact that we're at this point in our evolutionary process. Have they
Hmm.
all gone through this type of thing, or do you get any information on that?
So my understanding is in different ways, yes. And I want to be very clear. This has been made very, very clear to me. Um, Spiritual advancement is not the same as intellectual advancement or technological advancement. So and similarly, I feel like I need to say this too because it's coming through. They know there is none of these beings wants to be worshipped or viewed as a god or a lord or any term like that, because they make it very clear we are their equals. It's kind of like a master's student like saying that they're a god or like being viewed as a god compared to someone in high school, or someone in undergrad. Like they're just not there yet. That master student has already taken those courses and it's just at this point in their journey. That doesn't make them any better inherently or more advanced inherently than the person in undergrad, right? And so this is kind of how they have shown this to me. Earth humanity is just infantile in our development. We're still a very young species. And these other species, yes, while many of them are way more spiritually advanced than us, and they're really excited about this point in our history because we're becoming interstellar and we are becoming more spiritually advanced and reaching the point where we're able to interact more with them in our interstellar potential and capacity. And my book talks a lot about this as well, but there are those beings who are less spiritually advanced and more so just technologically advanced. And they kind of went down a different timeline. There's also interdimensional beings that exist, that there are all these timelines that exist where humanity goes down kind of a different path, into a more synthetic version of humanity, and there's kind of a lot there too because then there's this whole storyline that we can turn into a different type of species where we are a little bit less human, than we would like to be, as if we merge with AI, for example. Like that's one potential timeline. We would be technologically advanced, but not necessarily spiritually advanced. And because of the technological advancement, we would be aware of the fact that time is not linear as we know it here to be, and therefore time is accessible all the time because it's spherical and spatial in nature. So our future selves theoretically could come back, quote unquote, to this time where we are now, and we would be viewed as more spiritually advanced or more advanced or better in a certain way. But that's really just because there's been more experience gained. There's been more advancement that has taken place on that timeline compared to this moment in time that our present focal awareness is placed on, because everything's done through the present moment, because it's just an infinitely expanded present moment. Does that make sense?
As much as it can with my brain. But
Yeah. No, I
yeah,
mean, it's it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot.
When we go to talking about time and giving models of how it works, I mean, I it makes enough sense to me that I can listen to someone and be interested and not just
Yeah.
totally lost. That's about as far as I
Yes.
can go.
Yes.
But
Yes.
what you were saying, every time you bring something up, I have a new question. But we were likening it to a master student talking to a high school student, and I've heard so often, and so many other people have as well, that Earth is the hardest school. Like sometimes you hear that it's the hardest school in the entire universe, or something like that.
Hmm.
So these other beings who are more spiritually advanced than us, do they tell you how it is that they got to be where they were being? Did they go through things like Earth? Or does it even matter? Like this just happens to be a tougher training ground or a tougher gym to be in, but you can be as low level spiritually advanced as you want and join the Earth gym and then work your way through it. Does that make sense? Like how did these
It does.
others get there?
It makes perfect sense. So it's interesting. And this is another, I'm just seeing what wants to come through here. So the way that they've explained it to me is, how do I want to say this? There are essentially three stages of a soul's evolutionary growth. And the way they've explained it is there's stage zero, which is you're not yet conscious of the fact that you exist. And you haven't, but within stage zero to stage one, there are all these experiences that can be gained where you do become conscious and you do realize that you exist. Yes, but to get to stage one involves becoming aware of the fact that there's so much more out there, that everything exists in terms of multidimensionality. And it's not just what you see with your physical senses. And so it's being able to tune in more to all of that. And the reason I bring this up is a stage zero soul, for example, or you could view it as stage one, stage two, stage three, but a stage zero soul, the way that they've explained it to me, will kind of continue living lifetimes on their home planetary matrix. So all souls originate from source, which is why there's no soul that's like inherently older than any other soul, because time's not linear in the universe. We all come from source, the same origin point. However, there are souls that will continue incarnating or having lifetimes on a certain planet or planetary matrix. Um, and they keep doing that until they reach the next level of their soul growth or their consciousness expansion. And then they become what we would call like a starseed soul, which is just a soul who, it's not specific to Earth, a soul who can go have other lifetimes on other planets to continue expanding their consciousness. And then most souls stay, once they reach that stage, most souls, what I've learned, tend to stay in that stage, because the final stage is rejoining source consciousness. And most souls want to continue having physical experiences, of course, like in this soul expression. So the reason I bring this up is because on Earth, for example, you mentioned like the training ground in the school. Earth has historically been such a dense planet. Um, and I mean, we can see this all around us, right? We can feel this energetically. Even if we're not tuned in to energy per se, you can still feel the effects of everything going on here and how difficult it can be. And it's heavy. And so what's happened is there are indigenous Earth souls who have kind of been caught in these lower levels of consciousness. And I don't mean that again in a hierarchical sense per se. It's just more so that they keep repeating the same patterns. They keep having the same belief systems lifetime and lifetime and lifetime, and they don't ever really get out of that. They never expand their consciousness to the point where they do realize there's so much more that exists out there that they are a part of, and that everything is actually within us. And so what has happened, what my guides have told me, is that these souls that have kind of been stuck incarnating on Earth that are really like Earth-based souls, um, have needed help. Humanity as a whole, this is what like the whole this whole conversation of humanity's consciousness expansion and becoming interstellar in nature. These other souls from other planetary matrices who are at that stage one level will come and incarnate into bodies on Earth to assist with this consciousness expansion that Earth humanity is going through. Will come to talk about concepts like you and I are talking about right now, to help other people learn that there is so much more to their existence than they have been taught or conditioned or indoctrinated into believing. And this is how we liberate Earth humanity. And because the liberation is really just the remembrance of the truth of who we really are, and just coming home to that true nature of our multidimensionality. And so then we'll be able to become interstellar in nature, and we'll be able, the earth souls who keep incarnating here will be able to start having experiences elsewhere, and other planes of existence, rather than feeling like they need to keep coming back. And this has everything to do with the karmic loop as well, um, and just feeling like they need to continue, um, what's the word, making amends or balancing out karma from lifetimes here. And so, to answer your question with these extraterrestrial beings, like how did they come to Earth? Did they do this? A lot of them have come to Earth, but for the purpose of helping humanity kind of reach these heightened levels of consciousness. So they have had lifetimes on Earth. Not all of them, but a lot of them have come here for this reason. And at this point in time, there are a lot of extraterrestrial souls who are currently incarnated in human bodies on Earth for this exact reason, because it's kind of the final liberation of Earth humanity. Um, so yeah, I know that's like a long-winded answer, but they don't have to come to Earth, and many of them choose not to. But a lot of them feel so connected to us because we are genetically related, and they care about our ascension. They care about. I don't even like the word ascension, so I don't really like that I just used it. But they care about our expansion, because they want to connect with us and have other lifetimes with us and get to experience what it feels like to take this to the next level in our evolutionary journey, which also directly impacts everyone else in our, in our solar system first and foremost, but then also in our galaxy. So our actions directly impact everyone else who lives in the solar system and everyone else who lives in the galaxy.
I love your long-winded answers, by the way. That's they're the whole reason
Thank
the
you.
interview exists.
Yeah, they're
You
the
were
only ones
saying
I'm capable of.
you were describing what my last guest, he had pre-birth memories. His memory
Oh, wow.
was as to why, because I said, well, then why did you come here? And he he remembered agreeing, making a, God asked him, would you go down to Earth and help? There are a lot of souls down there that need help, essentially. But it
Yep.
left me wondering then, well, you mentioned that we were kind of getting stuck here.
Hmm.
Did something intervene to make us get stuck, or is it just how our
Yes.
evolution just progressed? Yes. That's
Hmm.
always my question. So then, if we would have just been left alone, do you think we would have just evolved to the point of, say, maybe being like the Arcturans are now, or
We
something
would.
like that?
So great question. My understanding, and it's coming through very clearly right now, I feel like this is the channeling here. We would not be where the Arcturians are right now because of this, because we're still infantile. In the grand scheme of things, we were not birthed here, so to speak, um, at a point in time that would allow us to be where they are now already. Like the way that we measure time, they are eons. Like they've been around for eons longer. Um, so if we hadn't been infiltrated, if we hadn't been manipulated or stunted in our consciousness expansion, yes, it would be our natural progression to be on that path. And we would be a lot further. We are supposed to be interstellar at this point. Um, Absolutely. And that they've made that very clear. And so now it can't be stopped now because the trajectory is the momentum that has been generated is so strong at this point that the timeline is now secured for us to reach this level, for us to become interstellar and live on different planets and interact with beings of other planetary matrices. Um, that it can't be stopped at this point. So we're on that trajectory, but there are still other timelines that exist, that are what we might call like lower vibrational timelines there, because all timelines exist all at once. So it's just a matter of where our, just like in our individual realities, how wherever our focal awareness, our consciousness is placed, that's the timeline that we experience. That's the probability that we continue to align to that, because all timelines exist as a probability in the quantum field, and the actions that we take, the thoughts that we have, the belief systems that we have, align us to whatever timeline has the highest probability of being experienced through those belief systems, intentions, thoughts, actions, you name it. It's the same thing on a macro level. So the collective consciousness, wherever that is placed, wherever the focal awareness of that is placed, right, is indicative of the timeline that we collectively align to and then therefore experience physically. And so that's why right now there's like this major convergence of timelines taking place, because we see like mainstream media pushing out certain narratives, but then there's this growing number of people around the world through social media that are realizing there's so much more to the story and that there's so much more to our existence. And so there's more and more people waking up, so to speak, or I like to use the word remembering. Wait, this, what we've been told is not actually true, or it's at least not the whole story by any stretch of the imagination. And there's actually a lot more going on behind the scenes here than we have been led to believe. And so the more people that continue to have experiences in their lives, because that's more of their soul starting to take the wheel, starting to notice the synchronicities, that it's, we're quite literally co-creating with Gaia, with Earth, because Earth itself is a sentient conscious being. And Earth itself, herself, I should say, is expanding into higher densities of consciousness. And so, of course, her inhabitants would have to follow suit because we are comprised of the same material as the Earth. And so that's why there are all these kind of competing narratives going on right now, because there's kind of this war. Really, it's not kind of, it is a war. The war's really been won at this point, but there are still all these operations at play that are trying to keep humanity in fear, to keep us locked in the system, the control system that controls the narrative, that controls where our attention goes, where our focus goes, that controls what we're putting our life force energy into and what we're feeding. And if we're constantly feeding this control-based system, then we can't really step into our own power and reclaim our own sovereignty and remove ourselves from the system entirely, because then the system is really set up as a pyramid. Without the base of the pyramid, the system collapses. So without the people keeping the system operating, it wouldn't exist anymore. And that's what we're starting to see kind of the beginnings of. And so it's really interesting because you can kind of see it's becoming more evident now. The people who are still kind of operating in third density consciousness, and what their thoughts are, and what their concerns are, what their fears are, versus the people who are expanding into these outer realms of awareness and states of consciousness, and what they're feeling called toward, and what they're wanting to build and create in the world and with the world and for the world. So it's really interesting to get to witness this in real time.
Are you aware of David Icke and what he's been talking about for decades?
Yes, so it's interesting. I've had a few people bring him up to me. I have not followed his work closely by any means, but I know I think I've seen like a few either interviews or just things of that nature with him.
I ask because my next question was going to be, well, who or what is messing with us? Who intervened and got us stuck? And he has an answer to that question. He specifically talks about a reptilian race who
Yeah.
has lived like parasites.
Uh-huh.
And there are certain humans that I guess are, it's bizarre, like they're possessed with a reptilian and they can shape shift into reptilians. And he says the royal
Yeah.
family, these old bloodlines, um,
Yes, it's true.
and that they're living off of loosh, I guess. That's why everything
Yes,
is
which
so.
is
So is that what you
and
would? How you would
Oh, go
answer
ahead.
what's messing with us, if that was my question, is that how you would kind of answer that?
Yeah, I have a few subtle differences, but we're saying the same thing. It's and Loosh is actually what Robert Monroe talks about as well, and that is our life force energy. It's uh, gosh, it's like how much to get into here. There's adrenochrome, which is produced through fear when fear enters the bloodstream, and that is actually harvested as loosh. And it's you. This goes into human trafficking, and I mean, there's so much that has been going on underground on our planet. And if people knew the full extent, it like there would be a mass ontological shock. Um, but yes, the species that have interfered with us, and I think we touched on this in our last interview too. But it's well, it's a couple different species. There's a reptilian species, but also a gray species. Like the Nibu Empire, or the Orion Greys, the Zeta Reticuli Greys. You'll hear multiple names for them, and then the Alpha Draconian reptilian empire as well, who are actually they're competing empires. They're actually kind of enemies, but they kind of became I can't even believe I'm about to say the word frenemies with regard to this, but they have a common interest, which is dominating and commandeering Earth, humanity, and our resources and our life force energy, and making us into a slave race. Um, and so this was the interference that took place. But there are, to address your point about being in human bodies, it's not so much in my understanding that they're possessed. It's more so that they've kind of made it, well, I guess, yeah, in a way they could be possessed, but that kind of removes their sense of agency in this, right? Like they made an agreement to work with these species. And so there is, like, that's where you hear like selling your soul, right? It's like a little bit of that, but then there's also, my understanding is that there are also, just like there are starseed souls like incarnate in bodies here, they are also starseeds. Starseed is not inherently light. So there are other beings that can also come into a human body. There are also walk-in souls that can happen, where consciousness will leave the body when it's time to leave, and then another soul or another consciousness will inhabit the body. And these are all agreements that are made. So I want to be clear about that. I mean, there's so much gray area here. I realize this, but um to just keep it down the fairway here, yes, so it was the reptilian species as well as the gray species. There were all these abductions performed on Earth. I mean, there are millions of people around the world who have experienced abductions, whether they remember it or not. And a lot of people have done past life regression hypnosis therapy who have also remembered childhood events, myself included, who did have an abduction take place. And my guides helped me become aware of this as well in my contact experience, because there was kind of a lot there. But humans have been used for genetic material kind of against our will for generations now. And this agreement was initially made, from my understanding, this is kind of what my guides had shown me, but was made it was under the Eisenhower administration, but it was done by the Cabal, which is a global organization. I've had a lot of people say, how can one country, or one man determine, the fate of humanity? And the answer is it wasn't the case. The Cabal is a global organization. And to David Icke's point, it dates back to that there's 12 bloodlines. Which includes the royal family. There are 12 bloodlines that are ancient bloodlines that this does have direct ties to. But it just so happened to be that there were some of these beings who came and made contact and made agreements with leaders of certain governments, Nazi Germany being one of those. And Eisenhower was approached by a member of the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and was basically told not to agree. He was basically warned, like, this is what will happen if you make an agreement with the Greys, who are coming in on behalf of the reptilians, which is another whole story. Um, but the Greys were coming in to basically give this sob story about how their species had basically bred out their capacity to reproduce. And so they needed to use our genetics to save their species, essentially. And Eisenhower was told, don't believe them. This is a trick they use on species who are below a certain evolutionary level in their consciousness to prey on their empathy. And this is what's going to happen if you do this. So Eisenhower believed the Galactic Federation of Worlds, and he wasn't going to make the agreement. But then the Cabal, or the Magi 12, the MJ 12, you might hear them referenced as, decided behind Eisenhower's back to make this agreement on behalf of the United States with um, with these species. And then they started coming in and making, part of the agreement was for them to have bases underground as part of the military industrial complex, which really became the military industrial extraterrestrial complex. So they had these facilities underground where they could carry out these genetic experiments, and it just turned into, even the Cabal, even the members of the Cabal who made the agreement didn't understand like the severity and how, I mean, they totally sold out humanity, yes, for power, for control, for profit, but they didn't understand the full severity and the full repercussions of this, because then it just became a full infiltration. And so then there were other agreements made with these species, with other global leaders as well. It just so happened to be that the US, of course, was the most powerful in terms of economic power as well as social power. And so this is kind of how that all started happening, and this is how humanity just was really taken advantage of at a time in our evolutionary growth where we were really just stunted. And the control system was put into place, and this is what we're now starting to come out of, which we're starting to remember our power has been taken from us. We don't have to be enslaved in this system or imprisoned in this system anymore. We're remembering our own power, and we're remembering that we don't have to agree to this collective agreement anymore, as we understand now the multidimensional capacity of consciousness. So I know that's a lot. Happy to address anything else in there, but that's, yeah.
Well, there was a lot came up. The first thing that came up was when we're talking about all this, the whole dynamics of all of it, all these different species. You got
Mhm.
the species that are highly evolved, species that are interfering with humanity. You got the Galactic Federation trying to keep peace. Is it all a big story that we all just said, "Hey, let's play this thing out," or was there any idea that this type of thing was going to happen beforehand, or if it was just something that it played out and we didn't know it was going to turn out this way, and now it's turning out to be this way? Does that make any sense at all? And I don't mean
I
just with
think so.
humanity. I mean everybody's a character in the story.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. Yes. So, I mean, my understanding is that this has been going on, these wars have been going on well before humanity came to Earth. I mean, there were the Orion Wars, which took place on Mars, like within our solar system, and within Orion's belt. I mean, there are so many planets that we're not even aware of at this point. But this has been, my understanding is that this has really been going on for a lot longer than humanity has even been around. And so this is kind of the same story replaying itself, or playing itself over, just on a different planet. And a lot of the souls that are involved in this were also involved in these wars before, which is why a lot of it just feels so natural. Like when my guides made contact with me and I started learning this information, it felt so real. Like I didn't even, I was like, oh, of course, this makes so much sense. Like I remember I was even shown memories of this, and like they told me that I was really involved with the Orion Wars, and like I came back for, for a similar purpose in this lifetime on Earth. Um, and it just felt so familiar. There was like that sense of familiarity. And so, to your point, I mean, is it all part of a grand play per se? I used to think, yes, I used to believe that. And I don't really anymore. I think that there's a lot, because that kind of removes our free will, our agency in this, and in creating this reality that we're experiencing. And I think there are certain players that are meant to play out certain storylines, like are kind of meant to do what they're meant to do. And I think that there are also a lot of unknown variables at play, because of free will. And it's just interesting to think about how, um, you mentioned like just that this broader play taking place at large outside of just Earth. And it's like, yes, to an extent, like this has played out before. And so of course it's playing out now in our focal awareness as real time at this point in time. But my guides have kind of shown me that it's not necessarily part of like a grand play per se. It is a grand play in terms of our own natural consciousness evolution. Like, of course, there were going to be big events that would be transpiring like this, and that there would be war, there would be duality, there would be dark and light, there would be masculine and feminine energy, there would be the imbalance bringing back to balance. These are natural cycles that we're following. So, to an extent, yes, but the way in which it's played out, my guides have kind of shown me that's not necessarily. Um, Part of the plan per se, although because momentum is built, the more like the more that we exist on a certain timeline, the more we continue to place our focus, our awareness on a certain potential, a certain reality as a collective, the more that probability of experiencing certain events becomes higher and higher and higher. So yes, to some degree this was anticipated. It was just a matter of when it would happen. Does that make sense?
Yes, and you answered actually my next question, which was that in it, maybe I guess it's not just applying to this planet, but in a universe where you are going to have duality, you're going to have light and dark, positive and negative, good and bad,
Hmm.
however you want to put it. How could there not be some sort of dynamic like that going all the time if there's no contrast? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
How
totally.
can you?
Hmm.
So will it ever end, I guess, or is it just going to
Yeah.
play out in an infinite amount of ways forever and ever and ever?
That is the best question. I don't know. I mean, and from what I have learned, and my just in my communication with my guides, it's not so much that it ever ends per se, because we always need the duality. There's all like, even if it ends, right? So let's say it does end. We reach the end of that cycle. It's like the hero's journey. There has to be another start to the cycle, right? And so there's always going to be something or someone coming in to disrupt, because that's just the natural state of the universe. It's entropy and order. And so that's my understanding is we are, as humanity on Earth, we are headed into, I mean, the higher timeline. And it'll be interesting to see how this continues to play out, because the light, quote unquote, is winning here. Um, if there's a battle between light and dark, the light is winning here, but the dark's not going down without a fight. And I really like to think of it as just the balance of light and dark. It's not so much like organized religion preaches, being like cast out the darkness and being afraid of the dark, um, evil, devil. But I think it's really this is about recognizing that all of this is actually just within us. It's just within our own consciousness. Like the devil, God, angels, demons, they all exist within our own consciousness, and therefore will be physically manifested, right? Because anything that exists in our consciousness has to be physically manifested somehow. And it's not just our consciousness. I was just thinking earlier today about how all ideas and thoughts are not actually ours. We're just vessels. And we're transmitting information from the quantum field. Um, and so it's more about realizing and discovering that we have all the power within us, and we are the light and the dark. It's not about casting out the dark per se. It's about learning how to balance it within ourselves and becoming conscious of that process. And so the way I see it is, the more aware humanity becomes, the more conscious humanity becomes, the more we will be able to stand in our power, the more we will be able to find peace and really exist in a world that is peace driven and that is unity driven, which is, it's unity consciousness is what we're expanding into, which is Christ consciousness. It's the remembrance of the Christ within all of us. So that's kind of how, and there will be another war at some point. Because the more that we expand, the more technology we start to discover, the more of ourselves we discover, then we start having interstellar experiences. There will be people, there already are people on Mars, but as far as like what the collective knows, or what mass population knows, there will be populations on Mars who will be living there as well as other planets. We will be interstellar. Interstellar travel will be just as common as flying on airplanes to different countries as now. Because if you think about it, even just a few decades ago, that was something that seemed insane. Like with the Wright brothers, coming up with the concept for an airplane, they were laughed at, they were exiled. People thought they were crazy for thinking about something like that. And now it's just a part of everyday life. So this is just where we're going. This is just the natural progression of things. And of course, it might seem a little out there to a lot of people right now, until it doesn't. Right. And then it's the next thing. And so when we start becoming interstellar and having experiences with other species and interacting with each other in this way, of course, there will be other wars that ensue or other problems that happen because that's just the nature of the contraction and the expansion. It's like the jellyfish.
Well, we've been talking about things in such broad terms. I want to get down into something more granular, some of the minutia, and it's pretty specific because what is today? This the 16th.
Hmm.
Um, this Charlie Kirk event. Do you have any information on whether or not you feel like it was a manipulated event, or if what the story that's being presented is really what it is? It was an angry person who didn't agree with him and shot him, or is it something that's pushing more division in the country?
So that's a really good question. I don't have a clear answer on it necessarily. What I do know to be true is that it's here to show us, this event is here to show us that our our freedom of speech, like this is kind of here to show us no one is, how do I want to say this? I don't want to say this in a fear-based or fear-mongering way. But I was going to say to show us that no one is safe in terms of free speech, like to show what is happening in our country, but in the world, and how it doesn't matter. It's not left versus right. This is not about left versus right anymore. This is about humanity coming together and learning to respect that we all need to be able to have a voice, even if you don't agree with what somebody believes or what they're saying. That doesn't that doesn't mean that the solution is to take their life. It's an opportunity to have and engage in a dialogue. It's an opportunity to also just allow an individual a soul expression to express themselves freely. And so, my what my guides have kind of shown me about this event is, regardless of if it actually was what it's been made out to be, or if there's a more nefarious reason behind it to drive division, it doesn't really matter because it's driving division either way. And it's also at the same time driving unity. I'm noticing more people from left and from the right starting to come together because more and more people are just waking up to the truth of what's really going on here and saying this is not okay. Our country and our world have gotten to a point where this is what we turn to. And so it's interesting because the same thing could be said about Donald Trump being in office, and how, people view him as, Christians would view him as like the savior, the return of Christ. And everyone else is like, oh my God, how do you not see what's going on here? But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because he's in office and he's driving division in extreme ways. And the product of his driving division in this way is also expansion in consciousness. It's waking people up because it's so bad, because it's so divisive, because it's so extreme. So do you see what I'm saying? It's like it's going extreme in both ways. So, and this is the same thing with Charlie Kirk. It's driving more division over here, and it's also creating an opportunity for people to come together and to rise more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't know if we talked about this last time, but the looking glass technology.
Yes,
Yeah, it
yes,
sounds like you're just describing that. It doesn't matter what they do.
yes.
Unity will win out because of it's like, oh, we'll try
That's
to
exactly it.
force this event that's going to divide them, and instead it didn't.
Oh, and there will be, I'm telling you, Jake, there's like my guides have been like this is just the beginning. Like there will be other events that transpire um globally. Like there's even like a staged alien invasion that they're kind of like preparing for, which we're seeing, right? With NASA coming out, right? Yeah, NASA's been like there's life on Mars, and they're also talking about Three Eye Atlas and how it could, I know you were gonna, yeah, Three Eye Atlas and how it could be a potential invasion. And like there are all these fear-based narratives out there, right? And religion has also created the narrative about aliens being demons, which was also done highly intentionally as well. And so this was always like, look, you mentioned Looking Glass, right? And how like time, this just goes to show time is not linear. And so we've had this technology where we can see all these different timelines that exist. And so there have been all these attempts to come in at different points in time to kind of change the course of events, the course of history, to see if anything can be changed to alter what ends up happening. But it's interesting because while quote unquote the darker forces have been coming in and kind of messing with the timelines in this way, so too have the light forces. So there's been this, it's like it doesn't, again, it doesn't matter because there's always going to be this coming into balance and going out of balance. And so it's interesting that you bring up Looking Glass because yes, that there's so much to say about that.
I think about it a lot, but I was going to
Yeah.
ask you, do you have any insight on this Three Eye Atlas? Is it just one more thing that, because they say it's supposed to be here in November, you think it's just one more thing that people talked about
Mhm.
for a while and nothing happens and then we move on to the next thing?
So my understanding is that it's not gonna be the thing that it's being made out to be. It is here though to It is here though to plant seeds in the collective consciousness that there are extraterrestrials around and that this is a probability that could happen. Not an alien invasion, that's not the probability. Although of course that exists as a probability, but that's not going to happen. It's more so about the possibility that life out there could come here and could be interacting with us. And so this is really, again, there are seeds being planted to ignite fear in people and to get them to, to turn to their government, for example, or like their trusted agencies to give them information on this. Similarly, there are people that are realizing, okay, there is a lot more going on here, and there is life outside of Earth, and so this is something that could be happening. So it is causing also more people to wake up. So it's kind of like there's like always there's the intended effect and then the adverse effect. But all this to say, it's not there's no invasion that's going to be happening. That's definitely not it. I also have kind of been told like nothing's actually going to hit Earth. Like we're not going to actually see this. It's more about on an energetic level, like kind of waking up more within us to the fact that something like this could happen. And also, it's kind of setting the stage for a potential, which would be a false alien invasion down the road, which would really be kind of like their last attempt at maintaining control over the population.
Do you get in any information on whether or not there will actually be an event? Because when I see Three Eye Atlas, I'm like, oh, that would be nice if it was benevolent beings and they're here and basically there's a savior. Will there ever
Yeah.
be where, not necessarily a savior, but where we have a physical craft land and they're here, no one can deny it, the whole world knows it, and it's just this event that just changes the course of everything instantaneously? Will that type of thing ever happen, do you think?
So first and foremost, I like what you said about the savior thing, because that's the other thing they want to make abundantly clear. There is no savior coming. We are our own saviors, and it's up to us to realize that and remember that and take back our own power. So I'm glad that you brought that up and our own sovereignty. But with regard to an actual event where like they would land here, yes. Their open contact is happening for sure. But it's gonna primarily, it's not so much an instantaneous like they've kind of showed me like it's not so much like this all of a sudden this huge event they land on the White House lawn and it's like everybody knows. It's less that and more about happening on an individual level and an individual consciousness level. We are disclosure. like the people having these experiences are disclosure. There are so many whistleblowers that are coming forward. Congress just had a UAP hearing where um, Anna Paulina, oh my God, I'm blanking on um, what's her last name? Anna Paulina.
I'm not sure.
Okay. She was talking about how there is a misinformation campaign going on by the US government about extraterrestrials and about like what's really going on here behind the scenes. So she's been speaking out openly about this because she's like, we, the people need to know the truth. And so all these whistleblowers have been coming forward. Congress has had multiple hearings about this, and people still don't believe it because they need to see it on Fox News, or they need to see it on mainstream media to absorb it as truth, or they need it like dropped off on their doorstep. So it's really about consciousness expansion as the proof, right? It's like when you start having conversations like this, when you start expanding your own awareness into the fact that there is a lot more going on and a lot more involved in on our planet, but just in our cosmos than we can interpret through our five physical senses. That's the process of creating contact with these beings. Now, will there be a global event that takes place where people are made aware of this? Yes. I mean, my intuition says yes, but my intuition also tells me it's not going to be like this big, again, the big thing where like they land on the White House lawn and everyone knows instantaneously. It just kind of feels like they'll continue to kind of make their ships visible, specifically above oceans, is what my guides have shown me. Um, they keep wanting me to go to places with ocean where I have access to this, and I know that that's going to become 2027 feels like a very big year. They've made me aware that that's a year where I think on a global level, most, if not everyone, will be very aware of the fact that extraterrestrials are working with us, and they will be making contact with. They already have made contact. Like our government officials already know this, but they will be making more physical contact, and it will be the human extraterrestrials, like the Pleiadians, who look just like us, which in many ways will be it's to create less discord, to kind of create more assimilation for us, like when we see beings from other planets coming and we know that they look like us. And at the same time, I kind of feel like that would almost be more jarring for certain people to be like, whoa, there are people that there are humans like us, but they don't live here, right? When I found that out, I was like, wait, what do you mean? Like I thought I couldn't understand what was going on, but yes, and they already do. There are those who already do live here, not just in bodies that are born here on Earth, but they can phase in. They can come in here. And so, yeah, people will be learning this on a global level, and it will be undeniable. But there will be people who literally cannot believe it. Like it will quite literally cause them to have existential crisis because of the paradigm that they've created through their own belief systems, and it's become so rigid for them that they will just reject this information.
I've heard 2027 so many times now, and it's
Yeah,
just so close. But somehow an hour and a half has gone by.
I
Um,
can't believe it. I could talk about this with you
and
all day.
I know, I'm like, how does this, anyway, I would love to have you back,
Yes.
and hear about your plant medicine experience
Oh my gosh,
and go
yes. I
from
feel like
there.
we'll have so much to talk about by that
Yeah,
time.
that would
Yeah.
be great. And I'm always, whether I interact with videos or not, I'm sorry, sometimes I'm just distracted. I'm always checking in with you,
Oh,
um,
thank you.
but
No,
just
you're
see
fine.
what's going on. But I asked you this last time, and maybe your answer is the same, maybe it's not. But what gives you hope in this day, and what could you give to others?
It's such a great question. Um, for me, what gives me hope is seeing people come together in ways that they never have before. When an event like Charlie Kirk happens, there's a lot of hatred and there's a lot of fear, but I'm noticing that people who might otherwise have not seen eye to eye are willing to set aside their differences and are willing to have a conversation and open up I mean, even the clients, the people who have been booking sessions with me, I'm finding a lot of them were really resistant at first. And they were like, I don't really know what I'm looking for here. I don't know what guidance I'm even seeking. This is all new for me. I always thought that people who talked about this stuff were crazy. And then I started realizing that I kind of think that this is true. And I feel like I need to learn more about it. And so I'm noticing that more people are willing to open up and expand despite how it looks to their old paradigm, despite how it looks um, to the people in their lives that might judge them otherwise. And so what's inspiring to me is seeing people really step into their courage in new ways and therefore into their power. And I just feel like this is just the beginning of it.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your message. Thank you for being on the show. And
Thank you.
yeah, yeah, my pleasure. I wish you all the best in Costa Rica, and I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to hear about it.
I can't wait to fill you in, Jake. I
All right.
love talking to you. Thank you for doing this.
Okay. Well, I'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds
All right.
good.
Have a
Bye.
great evening. Bye.
You too.